morning, and welcome to the Black Experience Route 66 Pop-Up Museum. Presented by Choctaw Freedmen, Citizenship Footprints, Inc., in partnership with the Oklahoma Historical Society. In celebration of Native American History Month, the Choctaw Freedmen Citizenship Footprints, or CFCF, is unveiling the Oklahoma Freedmen Families and Descendants pop-up exhibit. This exhibit explores the journeys of Freedmen families across Route 66 and other Oklahoma roads, highways, and byways for work and family gatherings, creating a new path for their descendants to follow. These journeys played a pivotal role in shaping not only African American history, but Oklahoma's history and narratives. I'm your MC for today's program, Amelia Dickerson, descendant of John and Delia Burris Choctaw Freedmen roll card numbers 337, 2859, and 2860. Some of you may be asking, what exactly is a Choctaw Freedman, and how are they connected to the 5 tribes of Oklahoma? Well, the Choctaw Freedmen are former enslaved African Americans who were emancipated and granted citizenship in the Choctaw Nation after the Civil War based on the requirements of the Treaty of 1866, signed by the U.S. government and the Choctaw Nation. Additionally, you may be wondering, what is the mission and purpose of the Choctaw Freedmen Citizenship Footprints, or CFCF? Our mission and purpose are to preserve our history, heritage, and culture as Choctaw Freedmen and their descendants, and educate our members, supporters, and the public about the contributions Choctaw Freedmen and their descendants have made into African American Oklahoma and this nation's history, heritage, and culture. To start off the program, I would like to ask the Reverend Johnny Newmide of the Miracle Revival Center to lead us into prayer, followed by a welcome from Dr. Matthew Pierce of the Oklahoma Historical Society, then followed by introduction and acknowledgments by Doris Burris Williamson, CFCF Chair.
Let's give our mistress of ceremony, that young lady, one more. I know why I'm here, so I'm going to do that and take my seat. Let us have a word of prayer. Dear God, our Heavenly Father, here we are again at this appointed place, at this appointed time. But first and foremost, we thank you. We thank you, O God, for all that you are in our lives, and we thank you for the journey that you have blessed us all to be able to encounter along the way, you being with us every step of the way. Well, God, now we look to you that we might celebrate in this event and that we might further come to understand and know the direction you would have us to go as a freedman, as a family. Oh, God, we thank you today. Lift every bowed head, give ease to any trouble that could very well be in our minds. We ask it in the name of Jesus. Well, God, we wouldn't be anywhere without you, but we're everywhere when you lead us and take us in the direction you would have us to go. We thank you today and remind us that you didn't come to be served, but that you came to serve. But you went a little further. You gave your life a ransom for us, and we thank you for that. In your mighty name we pray. Well, God, we thank you today. Amen. Well, I tell you, it's nobody like Jesus, man. Woo. Yeah. Thank you. Y'all give me about 37 seconds out here. I can't take it. Amen.
Well, good morning and welcome to the Oklahoma History Center Museum. My name is Dr. Matthew Pierce. I'm the state historian for the Oklahoma Historical Society. I want to take a brief moment and acknowledge Shirley Nero and Donnie Nero who are here. Shirley serves on the Oklahoma Historical Society Board of Directors, so I'm glad to see that she is here and that Donnie is here as well. Of course, you are all here for fellowship. I encourage you all, if you haven't already, to take a look at the pop-up exhibit behind you. I am just here to, again, welcome you to the Oklahoma Historical Society, welcome to the Oklahoma History Center Museum, and I want to encourage you to come back and visit and view our galleries if you haven't had a chance to already. I also want to make sure you are aware of our Research Center library, which is down the hall, which is free to the public, which has a vast variety of resources that are available to you all for genealogy and family history. And I just want to thank you for including us and and allowing us to help tell your stories. The mission of the Oklahoma Historical Society is to collect, preserve, and share Oklahoma history. And so thank you for welcoming us. Thank you for allowing us to host you, and thank you for allowing us to participate. If you have any questions about what services and resources the Oklahoma Historical Society can provide, you're more than welcome to reach out to myself. Also, Sadie Herrera is here as well with the Multicultural Office, and she's on the program for later. So again, welcome.
Good morning, everyone. I am so glad to be here. Thank you all so much. My name is Doris Burris Williamson, and I'm a native of Oklahoma. I attended Douglas High School as a member of the class of '71, a graduate of the University of Central State and Texas Women's University. However, I am here today to welcome you to this wonderful event and to give recognition and honor to so many people who have been such an integral part of our journey. In November, we celebrate Native American Heritage Month, which is a time to honor the traditions, languages, and stories of Native American communities. This time not only serves as a time for reflection on the injustices faced by the indigenous people, but this month is also a time and an opportunity for us to acknowledge the often overlooked narratives of African Americans and within the Native American history. The inception of the Native American History Month started in 1990 and marked a pivotal moment in recognizing the rich tapestry of cultures that comprise our nation. Yet the stories of the freedmen remain underrepresented. However, through diligent research, going through countless amount of government documents and capturing many of the cherished family narratives which were passed down through many generations, we can now unveil the truth of our existence alongside the Choctaw Indians, specifically for the Choctaw Freedmen. Who are the Choctaw Freedmen? They were the former enslaved individuals who were once owned by the Choctaw Indians. My ancestors were owned by several prominent Choctaw chiefs, Chief Peter P. Pitchland and Chief Samuel Garland. The Choctaw Freedmen were not just enslaved by the Choctaws, but they were ensconced into the Choctaw culture. Specifically, our ancestors spoke the Choctaw languages. They practiced the Choctaw Indians' rituals and even the traditions. For those of you who need proof, here's a short video of Cousin Clara Sue. Cousin Clara Sue, you were sharing something with me about one of the other Native American Choctaw native phrases when it comes to fighting. What did you say that was? And what does that mean? Translate that for us.
I'm gonna fight you.
Okay, thank you. By acknowledging the Choctaw Freedmen during Native American History Month is not only befitting for celebrating our Choctaw Freedmen ancestral ties, but we also acknowledge the Freedmen people who are an integral part of the 5 American tribes that migrated in the 1800s on the Trail of Tears to the new Indian Nation territory, otherwise known as Oklahoma. This includes freedmen of the Seminole, Cherokee, Creek, and Chickasaw tribes. They too should be connected, acknowledged, and celebrated as part of the Native American Heritage Month. As we celebrate Native American Heritage Month, it is crucial to shine a light on historical contributions of our Choctaw Freedmen ancestors and their descendants. For over 225 years, our ancestors have been remarkable as they played an integral role in the history of the Choctaw people and the Choctaw Freedmen community and Oklahoma's history. They have embodied a legacy of strength, resilience, and culture and pride. It is our responsibility for these narratives, ensuring that they are not lost in time, but celebrated as the profound impact they have made in sharing our history. So let us come together today as we educate and embrace the full spectrum of our history, enlightening the invaluable contributions of the Choctaw Freedmen and fostering a sense of pride within the community. In order to attend today's program, many of you have traveled across Oklahoma City, the state of Oklahoma, as well as the country and highways and skyways. So you may have heard the saying, travel is more than just the journey, it's the destination. Well, this is exactly what we hope our CFCF pop-up museum exhibit documents will shed light on. The journey of the Choctaw Freedmen, Black experience as it relates to Route 66. We are here to unveil the CFCF pop-up banners on our travel exhibit, which were recreated for our Black Experience Route 66 program. The banners before us are a result of many years of research conducted by many people, which some of you all are sitting here today, and some who have passed on. The CFCF organization collaborated and worked with the Oklahoma Historical Society, which I thank you, on this project, and it has taken us about 5 months to complete. And today, during the formal unveiling, I'd like to applaud and say thanks and acknowledge all of those who have helped us a lot on the foundational work. I do hope your experience here today will be enlightening, encouraging, inspiring, and nostalgic as we revisit and go on a journey connecting you to the lands, culture, and the lifestyle of the Choctaw Freedmen and their descendants who are still with us today on this historic path on Route 66.
Next, coming to the stage, please welcome concert soloist Miss Erica Thomas. Miss Thomas has been an integral part of the artistic community in Oklahoma for over 20 years now. Her interpretations of operas and spirituals show her stunning vocal range and complement her melodic voice. Miss Thomas also brings recitals that celebrate diverse musical genres and soul-stirring renditions. Please let's welcome Miss Erica Thomas.
That 20 years should be more like 40 years now. I must have wrote that 20 years ago. Every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Oh, every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Upon the mountain, my Lord spoke. Out of his mouth came fire and smoke. All around me look so shine. I asked the Lord if all was mine. Oh, every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Oh, every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Jordan River, chilly and cold, well, it chills the body, but not the soul. Ain't but one train runs its track, well, it runs to heaven and runs right back. Oh, every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Oh, every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Thank you, thank you. As you know, that is a spiritual, African-American spiritual. Now, often we do not put a composer on the spiritual because they were done in the field, so nobody knew who did what for the spiritual. However, one of your own people that you may or may not know about is credited with writing two spirituals, particularly that we know. One is Still Away, and the other is Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, what is said to be written by Wallace Willis, a Choctaw Freedman, right here in Oklahoma near Hugo. So, and it's very unusual to have an actual composer of the spiritual. So to know that, that's pretty awesome, isn't it? And it's pretty wonderful. I've been knowing about that for a while. And, I was like, wait a minute, there are no writers of the spiritual. But this brother was heard singing this in the fields with his daughter, Minerva. And they came over, I believe, from the Trail of Tears as well to Oklahoma. And so Alexander Reed, a minister at the Old Spencer Academy down near Choctaw, Hugo, a Choctaw boarding school, heard Willis singing the two songs that I just mentioned and transcribed the words and melodies. This was in turn given to the Jubilee singers, if you know the Jubilee singers of the 20th century, and they're still going, by the way, at Fisk University. They still tour throughout the world singing these wonderful songs. And the song, and there was a time, I teach at Langston University, I've been teaching there for a long time, I teach music. And for a long time, we didn't want to sing the spirituals. But my voice teacher, Thomas Terry, taught me, not only in my church, but he taught me at OU, University of Oklahoma, the joy of the spiritual. And so I love giving spirituals to my students, particularly at an HBCU, because if we don't sing them, who will? Amen? Amen. Okay. Also, I want to tell you that the American spiritual, the Negro spiritual, the African American, however you want to term it, other than our native music that comes out of the ground, is the only indigenous music to the United States. And because the rock and roll and R&B, all of that moves out of the spiritual. So take pride in that. Take pride in the spiritual. It's something to take pride in. Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, did you know is Oklahoma's official state gospel song? It was signed into law in 2011 by Mary Fallon, God love her. And the 2002, the U.S. Library of Congress honored the song as one of 50 recordings chosen that year to be added to the National Recording Registry. So I just wanted I was looking and I talked to Sister Doris. I said, well, let me look this up because I knew about Wallace Willis and I had heard this many years ago. And so I thought, what a fitting place to sing Swing Low, Sweet Chariot than today, right now. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. I looked over Jordan, and what did I see? Coming for to carry me home, a band of angels coming after me, coming for to carry me, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, carry me home. If you get there before I do, coming for to carry me home. Tell all my friends I'm coming too, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me
Moving along in the program, I would like to introduce our keynote speakers. First, we will hear from Doris Burris Williamson. Then we will hear from Brenda Droke, followed by Michael Victor, Wanda Warren, and Doris Burris Williamson will close out this section of the program. Thank you.
Thank you again. Let's see if I can turn this over. Okay. Let me go back. Not yet. Okay. While enjoying the beautiful scenery, landmarks, and terrains, and the places I have traveled to my destinations, I would often stop along the way and reflect, gazing upon the landmarks and the scenery and the buildings that had been recently built, to old buildings that existed for many years past. And I would ask myself, does this experience fit into the whole? How does this experience fit into the whole scheme of my life today? Furthermore, I have often found myself immersed in its history, viewing the people, the buildings, the landmarks in these towns and communities, whether they were newly constructed or a relic of the past. I'd often wonder how they shaped our identity, pondering not in the narrative of American history, but in a specific journey of the Choctaw Freedmen. Now, by some standards, some people would say, I'm old school, okay? But because I've spent over 30 years as a genealogist, researcher, historian, and a retired former school teacher. I think it's only natural that I look at things through a historical lens and that I ponder on the journey of the Choctaw Freedmen. Before taking on this project, I asked myself, what is the Choctaw Freedmen's Footprints citizenship organizations connected to Route 66 and the byways and the highways here in Oklahoma? And the answer I came up with, your ancestors' footprints. The old adage, to know where you're going, you must know where you've been. But before we dig deep into the Choctaw Freedmen experience with Route 66, I'd like to touch on the origins of Route 66. Route 66 began in 1926 when the Bureau of the Public Record Roads launched its first federal highway system. Like other highways in the system, the path of Route 66 was a cobbling together of existing local, state, and national roads. And after I did some research on Route 66, I further discovered that it was established on November 1st, 1926. The highways became one of the most famous roads in the United States, and it ran from Chicago, Illinois, through Missouri, Kansas, Texas, and New Mexico, Arizona, before ending in Los Angeles, California, which covered over 2,448 miles. While growing up, I remember hearing stories from many of my relatives who traveled along the path of Route 66 and other highways and byways from their homes in California, Arizona, and Texas to visit us here in Oklahoma. The route became popular with the trucking industry in the 1930s, and John Steinbeck's book called Mother Road, The Great Sarath. However, through history, Route 66 has served us in many ways. The Green Book is something we've all heard about, and I recall hearing about the Green Book from my relatives during their travels. The Negro Motorist Green Book was a guidebook for African American road trippers. It was founded by Victor Hugo Green between 1936 and 1967. The Negro Motorist Green Book was essential for the survival of thousands of Black Americans in the era of segregation and where there were Jim Crow laws in place, where many African Americans were unable to stay in hotels and motels as they traveled, going through sundown towns. Now, I know some of you are probably wondering, what is a sundown town? These sundown towns are where African Americans were under threat of violence after sunset, and if they were forbidden to drive through these towns after the sunset. For those who did, they would face many dangers of possible lynchings or receive tickets or some cooked up violations, which they had to pay cash right on the spot, or you would have to go to jail or post a bond in order to be released. Our ancestors found that by traveling on the major highways like Route 66 and using the Green Book, they were able to steer away from these sundown towns. They located better travel paths which offered less threats and intimidations and gave their family the opportunity to see more landmarks and attractions as well as arrive at their destination safely. As far as transportation from 1930 to 1936, Route 66 was used by farm workers during the Dust Bowl in Oklahoma. Route 66 was the primary route for farmer workers who migrated to California and also for people who were looking for work in other places. In the 1950s through the 1960s and later, vacationers used Route 66 that became a popular spot for those who traveled across the U.S. highways to get to Los Angeles, California. As far as economic growth, Route 66 provided economic opportunities for small towns and businesses along the route. It also allowed travelers to support businesses near the route since travelers needed food, fuel, and would often lead to larger restaurants and gas stations which were set right off of the exit ramps. Roadside attractions also popped up, which increased tourism that led to the development attractions like frozen custard stands, souvenir stores, and Native American curio shops. However, despite the progress of these newly expanded highways and roads along the so-called end of the era of Jim Crow in 1960 to 1970, the African Americans in this country continue to face pitfalls and traps, which would make experiences on Route 66 travel a little dangerous, hence they still relied on the Green Book. To a more modern travel experience where they now able to go bypass some of the sundown towns now, towns where they drove through wider 2-lane and 4-lane highways, exits with modern gas stations, stores, entertainment, and recreational spots. In modern times, everyone feels somewhat safer with their travels now. But for many of our Choctaw Freedmen ancestors and descendants, Route 66 highway and byways through Oklahoma and the country, there was still a darker side. Yes, in the 1960s. On Route 66, every mile could be a minefield. Businesses with 3 Ks in the title, such as the Cozy Cottage Camp or the Clean Kitchen Cottages, were code words for the Ku Klux Klan, and they served whites only. Black motorists, which I remember some of my relatives, yes, of course, also had to avoid these sundown towns and bring their food along with them. Yes, I remember we would pack a lot of food to make sure they had many comforts with them when they would travel along, heading back home. While growing up, I remember having more intimate connection with Route 66. As a young pre-teenager, at the age of 9 or 10, working with Mrs. Dupree's Laundry, Help Yourself Laundromat, next door to our house here in Oklahoma City on Abram Ross Street on the east side, I would listen to the radio. The radio was one of the few main sources we had in keeping up with the news and having some form of entertainment as we worked. Radio station KOMA with Dale Weber Jr. was the main station, and Mrs. Dupree kept the radio on. She enjoyed most of the music from the 50s, some was from the 60s, and also the 70s. But we were not allowed to touch that dial. And of course, as I became much older, our black radio station came in focus, KBYE, with Ben Tipton. So I listened to the Ben Tipton show every day. But going back to my preteen years, boop, at the age of 9 or 10, I remember listening to KOMA, Dale Weber radio station. That's the first time I heard Nat King Cole's song, Get Your Kicks on Route 66. And little did I know how I would be connected to this historic event today, as our organization, CFCF, would have a chance to partner with Route 66 for this program. The four banners in the back we are presenting you today is from the Burris, Liggins, Coleman family, whose history goes back as far as the 1830s. They will depict narrative stories about the ancestors and their descendants, as well as other freedmen families whose origin began in Oklahoma. They are going to share with you some narrative stories and personal accounts for which will embody a complex and rich history with Route 66 for us to focus on that go well beyond any chronicle roads that we travel today. The museum exhibit banners are more than just 4 banners. They are powerful narrative stories that encapsulate the lives at the enduring spirit of our Choctaw Freedmen descendants, such as Jerry Burris, who was a Choctaw Indian interpreter and black cowboy, who traveled on many of the cattle trails, which established the roots of Route 66. James C. Burris, the first black elected sheriff here in Oklahoma. Charlotte Ford, who was a poet and a community advocate. Delia Burris, who was the town's midwife who delivered over 100 babies. You can view these people on the banners there in the back. And Michael McClellan and his wife, Ernestine, who were also from Tom, Harris, and Idabel, Oklahoma. Our speakers recount these sensational tales. As our speakers recount these sensational tales, I would request that everyone reflect upon the experiences of the journey of the freedmen as we are reminded the importance of preserving our history and advocating for those voices who are now silenced and no longer with us. And with that in mind, we're now going to hear from Brenda Droke. Let's give Brenda Droke a warm applause, please.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. I'd like to thank each of you for sharing part of your Friday with us today. And I would also like to extend a special thanks and recognize our guests from California, Texas, Portland, Oregon, and other areas. And if there's anyone here celebrating any special occasions, birthdays, marriages, new additions to the family, the holidays, blessings to you on anything whatever you're celebrating. Today, we'd like to start by sharing our family's stories for the Route 66 Experience Project. So let me take you with us as we make our first stop of our journey. The Choctaw Freedmen Citizenship Footprints Organization selected our address at 3340 Northeast 13th in Oklahoma City as our home-based location due to the many historical and cultural contributions that were birthed at this property over many generations. And this was in our home, the McClellan and Burris families. And this started in the 1950s and it extends until today. This site-based location is on the east side of Oklahoma City in the African American community nearby parts of Route 66 highway. Over 70 years ago, during the Jim Crow era and segregation, this was not just a home for our family, but this property became well known and gave birth to many untold stories and experiences presented by Choctaw Freedmen and those who cherish its history. There is a saying, every home has a story to tell, and we want to share some of our story with you. Our home was one of the first stops when out-of-town guests arrived. Guests could have a meal, spend the night, or continue to their next destination. Ernestine and MC McClellan, which are my parents, welcomed guests and families from out of town to stay at their home since blacks were not allowed to stay in hotels during the Jim Crow era. And of course, Doris mentioned it was like a minefield. Every mile you drove was like driving through a minefield. And I thought about that. I thought, thank God we don't have to deal with that now, because if I saw something with a K on it, I think I'd just keep going. But we have definitely been blessed. But it will remind me of this every time I see some business that has K's in their name. Of course, black motorists avoided these sundown towns, as Doris stated. And I want to tell you a little bit about my dad. Of course, my mother had her way of convincing him to do a lot of things that she wanted to get done. She would start things, and he didn't want to, but he finally gave in. She'd start a project, and he'd say, no, I'm not doing that. And then before you know it, he'd take over the project. So she had her way of convincing him to do things. But he was a hardworking and devoted husband and father who loved his family. And although he was the disciplinarian in the family, he would always find time to create activities for us. I remember Sundays we would drive to Al's Ice Cream and the Ice Dock and get our pops, which normally people nowadays have that kind of thing all the time, but that was our special treats, and that was something that he did for us that I remember. He was also a member of Greater Marshall Memorial Baptist Church, and my dad and some of his neighborhood friends would sometimes form small groups of men, and they would share their skills and talents. And some of the things they would do is they would get together as a group and they would paint their homes. They'd paint one home, several men. They would make patio repairs or pour patios, because some had different skills, and what one couldn't do, the other could do. And they would share these skills with their sons. They would let them know, this is something you'll need to learn how to do, because you may need to do this one day when you become an adult. And they would also take fishing trips together. There were so many activities that occurred at our home. I distinctly remember seeing pictures. I was too young to remember, but my grandfather, Prince Burris, had a wedding at our home. And my cousin James Mucker at one time had a wedding at our home. Also, we had a reunion hosted at our house, and we took pictures in the backyard. And most of us were young, some were babies, and some were not even born yet, Jackie. So today, this property site has become well known as it gives birth to many of the unknown stories and black experiences presented by the Choctaw Freedmen citizenship footprints and those who cherish its history. Ernestine Burris McClellan was born in 1930, and she died in 2021. And she was a person of grace, peace, and openness. She was a very ambitious woman, and a community activist. She was treasurer of her neighborhood association, a cherished mother and teacher. She was an entrepreneur, a seamstress, and church member. And she attended Marshall Memorial for approximately 70 years. That's a long time. She was dedicated to serving others and making her community a better place. Mrs. McClellan and her neighbor Bernice Washington, they worked together to ensure trash service and completion of roads to our neighborhood streets in the 1960s. I remember that we had some streets at our neighborhood streets in the 1960s. I remember that we had some streets that didn't connect to Garden Oaks, but, well, they were streets, but they were dirt roads. And so they petitioned to have those paved. And so they worked together for that. And she also worked in her neighborhood association to spearhead the installation of historical streetlights in her community. Now, she and Barbara Washington Thomas and Sue Washington, they started a sewing and craft class at Garden Oak School, That school had been closed, and then when it reopened, they converted it into a community center. Mrs. McClellan's legacy will continue to live on through the lives she touched and the impact she made in her community. So let's listen and watch a tribute that was made to her in her honor that benefited her after she passed. You're ready.
Ernestine McClellan.
Oh, there it is.
And she was a retired teacher, and they were closing the Garden Oaks Elementary School down, and we were asking people what did they want to do with the building. And so she gave us her ideas, and Mrs. McClellan ended up being involved with us and staying with us up until she couldn't get around anymore. And so she passed this year, and so we go, you know, we kind of want to celebrate all the community workers who just dedicate their life. I mean, she never got a lot of credit for doing the things that she did. And the school turned into a community center, and a fraternity has now bought that building. And so that's some very tireless and visible work that Mrs. McClellan did. And so what we're doing is starting the Ernestine McClellan Scholarship Fund. And that fund will go to anybody. We raise funds for people to go through our program. And that fund will go to help pay for somebody to go through our program. But it would be in her honor. And so I will say that already a $750 donation has been made to that fund. And so I would like to have her daughter Brenda come down. Did we? You did? Okay. Brenda, would you come down? I have a little something for you. Miss Legal. Let's see. Ladies and gentlemen, Brenda Drock, Mrs. McClellan, Drock, I will learn to say your name. This has been the hardest part of being on Zoom for 12 hours, saying names. So Brenda, would you like to say something?
I would just like to say good evening, first of all. And I would like to thank Possibilities for all that they've done for my mother and the community. She has worked tirelessly, and she always put God first, family, and then her community. She had a passion for working in the community, and she always did what she could do. And we just appreciate you guys so much for everything that you've done. She's proud of where she's come from, and she's trying to make things better for future generations that come behind her. And so we just appreciate everything. And I don't know if that's part of her heritage. I saw the gentleman with his Indian attire on. I don't know if he's still here. But she's a Choctaw Freedmen, and she works hard, and she's very proud of her heritage, and she loves to help and serve others. And we thank you so much for everything that you've done in her honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I want to open this, but it's your present, so would you mind opening it now? It won't jump out with you. So, okay, so take let me see, these are little, so 1, 2, yes, 3, 4. These are bowls for the siblings. And then there's a big bowl. Notice the circle theme, because circles have no beginnings, no endings. And so we thought that this would be something that your family could celebrate and remember the circle of life and what your mom brought to us. Thank you.
We will think of her every time we use these bowls. It was a struggle, but God brought us through this. She had Alzheimer's, and so we cared for her almost 6 years, but it was worth it, and she deserved it. So sometimes there's a test of patience, but in the end, you'll appreciate spending that quality time with those who suffer from this disease. And one thing that I tell people, one lady shared with me, she said, when someone has Alzheimer's, it's like you lose them twice. You lose them when they develop the disease because they are no longer aware of who you are, what's going on. And then in the end, you lose them at the point of death. So thank you very much.
Thank you. There's an extra bowl in there, and that's for me. So for whoever you have come to the thing. Because she always had her heart open to invite people in. Thank you. Well, that's about my evening, so it's been nice. Alicia, is she still here?
That was Byron with Possibilities, another organization that my mother belonged to. And moving on, I have a few more things I'd like to share with you. Talking about Route 66, there's some things that, some experiences that I had on Route 66. Some I remember and some I was too young to remember. But I do recall going to California. My Uncle J.C. Burris, who is on one of the banners, and his family drove to California on vacation one year, and they took us with them. And that was my first road trip that long of a distance. And I'm sure we probably used the historic Route 66. I was too young to remember the details, but I do remember one incident with my sister about that trip. One of my most memorable holidays was going to Lake Overholser on July 4th. We would go there for picnics on Route 66, and at that time, families would pick a site, and we would eat our meal, walk to other sites, and visit neighbors and friends who were also celebrating just like we were. And like some of you in this room from Oklahoma, we would sometimes go to the Tower Theater on Northwest 23rd. I'm sure you probably remember that, which that is also a part of Route 66. And in 2016, I attended my husband's family reunion at Lake Overholser, which is also on Route 66. We all wore our T-shirts with the Route 66 logo on the sleeve. And I didn't realize at the time that that would be a part of something that I would be involved in today. Now, 2nd Street in Edmond, if you're familiar with Edmond, 2nd Street in Edmond is part of Route 66. And I go up and down 2nd Street all the time. And when Doris asked me to participate in this project, I started noticing signs that said Route 66. And that same road will take you to Pops, which is Route 66, and we just visited that this week. And the Red Barn also, and it's just several things that you can experience when you're on Route 66. Now, although I-40 replaced most of the Mother Road, some parts of Route 66 are still open. And the centennial celebration for Route 66, I've been told, will be in 2026. And at that time, if we're still here, and I hope and pray we will be, we can say, happy birthday, happy 100th birthday, Route 66. Thank you.
I'm a little nervous. I'm gonna operate like the kids today. I took my notes on my phone and put everything together for my talking points. But first of all, I want to send a tremendous shout out to Doris. You've done at some point today, I want you to take a step back and, as my grandfather would say, jump back and kiss yourself. But I'm very proud of you. I'm very proud to be here. I'm very proud of my family. Before I get into my points, but I'm very proud of my family. I spent a lot of my youth here. I got to see Junior for the first time since '81. So this is a very dope experience, and seeing my great uncles and my grandmother and my cousins and my esteemed cousins on these banners is surreal. But I'm gonna do a little bit of reading and then I'll go back to it. By way of introduction, my name is Michael Victor, and I'm the grandson of Jesse Bell and the great grandson of Lena Simpson Liggins. My grandmother was born in Tom, Oklahoma, on May 2nd, 1926, to Lena Simpson and Winfield Wills. Much of her childhood and young adult life was spent in Idabel, Oklahoma. Jesse was one of 7 siblings born to Mama Simpson: Uncle JC, Uncle Alvin, Uncle Calvin, Uncle AJ, Aunt Iola, and Aunt Ernestine, who I will be calling Aunt Teen for the remainder of this, okay? So just know that reference Aunt Teen, Ernestine to Aunt Teen, that's 18. All of whom stayed close to, all of whom she stayed close to throughout her life, and all of whom left indelible marks on me throughout my life. My Aunt Iola and my, you know, I paid close attention to them because they argue like they feuded like the Hatfields and McCoys. Now Bell, and well, Iola, just shut up a second and let me. Bell. So those are back when telephone calls cost money. They had the budget and they had we can't spend all our time arguing now. But Jessie would eventually move to California with her husband, LaVoy Charles Bell Sr., and have 2 children, LaVoy Jr. and Shakita, born in 1954 and 55, respectively. Despite living in California, Jessie traveled back to Oklahoma with relative frequency, considering the times, you know, hoping to maintain the family cohesion. I was born in '71, and one of my earliest memories was preparing for trips to Oklahoma, particularly in and this would be this picture right here. This is 1977. My grandmother, we were getting ready to leave. My uncle was the only person that was driving at the time. My mother, I don't think she drove us. I believe that was Uncle Chuck that drove us to the bus station on Indian Hill to get ready to hop on Route. We would take Route 66 to the 15 freeway to the 40. And one of the more indelible things that I remember, my grandmother would fry chicken late at night, 2 o'clock in the morning, because our bus would leave at 6. And the one thing that I remember very, very vividly was we'd have this big bag. It was a greasy bag. And looking back, it was symbolic of intent. It was symbolic of intent to keep our family together and keep our family a cohesive unit, no matter how far away we were. And so I'm reminded of that. And it was also because we couldn't afford, because we stopped in Flagstaff, Arizona, along the 40, Route 66 to the 15 to the 40, and we'd stop in Flagstaff, Albuquerque, Amarillo before we got here to the city. I remember the bus route like it was yesterday. And ironically, in California, we live along Route 66. Our office is on Route 66, ironically, and I'll go back to that. There's some irony there too. But upon reaching the city, we set up our home base at 18's house. And 18 she was a school teacher, and Uncle MC worked at Tinkerfield, if I remember right. And Uncle MC would go to work, he'd leave when we were asleep and come home when we were just kind of starting to move around. Because I believe he worked a 5 to 2 schedule or something like that, 6 to 2. But I remember that very vividly. And I remember 18 would come home with donuts. And so we'd have donuts, and she'd cook a good meal, and everything would be on the stove every day. So I remember that very vividly. So every summer from 1977, which is my earliest recollection, to 1983, we would spend the month of July in Oklahoma, into August a little bit, sometimes just depending. And I remember one trip in particular. We went. It was who was it? Rodney? It was us. It was grandmother, Uncle JC, Rodney, Earlene, Aunt Iola, Aunt Teen, and me and my grandmother. And we went to Tom and Idabel, Oklahoma. And I remember this so vividly because they were trying to point out where houses were. And Aunt Iola and my grandmother, as per the usual, were arguing about what was what. And Uncle JC said, now everybody just calm down, because that was Mr. So-and-so there, and we used to work on that land there. And so I remember, those are things that I remember about that particular trip. Also, we went down to New Boston, Texas, to Uncle Robert's. Uncle Robert had a fish market down there. And we went down to go see him while we were there, and we ended up staying back in Idabel and heading back this way. So that was in '83 was the last year that me and my grandmother came here, and I believe that all of the siblings were together in Oklahoma in '83. And I like to pay close attention to Uncle JC as well, because he really truly left not just an indelible mark on me, but an indelible mark on society. And I remember my Uncle JC would come to California to pick up a prisoner. And this one particular time, my grandfather was sitting polishing his bullets, and he had a little TV tray, and he was polishing his bullets. And I said, well, Grandpa, what are you doing? Why you got the gun out? And he said, my brother-in-law is coming, and he gonna deputize me because we got to go pick us up a prisoner. He said, so my brother-in-law gonna deputize, because he had a badge on the thing too. And I said, well, now, Grandpa, is there some truth to that? He said, now, Cotton Picker, I know my brother-in-law is coming to deputize me. And Uncle JC was larger than life. He was a larger than life presence, and he'd come in and he'd be like, yeah, I'm a deputizer, Michael. And I'll never forget it, that their police car was a 1977 Seville, and they drove to the LA County jail. I'll never forget this. I'll never ever forget this. And my grandfather said the man came out in full shackles. And so the deputies at the LA County jail took all the shackles off of him, and they said, you want to go ahead and put your handcuffs on him? And Uncle JC looked at him and said, now, boys, you gonna run? He said, now, boys, you gonna run? And he said, no, sir, Mr. Burris, I'm not gonna run no more. And he said, no, he don't need no handcuffs. He said, I'm gonna give this man his dignity. And that was symbolic of what my Uncle JC was. He said, this is a man, and I'm gonna give him his dignity. And it was, it's one of those things that I'll never forget. I remember going to Meridian, Oklahoma with him to campaign around in an area that was predominantly white. And, he said they were telling that they were having some problems, and he liked if he could open a substation down there. And he said, well, we're gonna figure something out. And I said, well, Uncle JC, what are you gonna do? He said, well, I'm gonna park a police car down here. I said, well, what's that gonna do? He said it's gonna deter them, because once they see a police car, they're gonna think the police is around somewhere. And he put a decoy car down there. And these are all things that I learned. But the one thing, and that once again, that this experiences gave me, and my son is here with me, and it makes me very, very proud that he's truly a family person, because this is what our family is. And the last time that our family, that all of the sisters and brothers were together, was in July of 1983. And my mother is a tremendous inspiration for me and a lot of people. And I remember she called my grandmother and said, Mom, I quit my job and I'm starting a business. And my grandmother said, these are all things that I learned, but the one thing, and that once again, that this experiences gave me, and my son is here with me, and it makes me very, very proud that he's truly a family person, because this is what our family is. And the last time that that all of the sisters and brothers were together was in July of 1983. And My mother is a tremendous, tremendous inspiration for me and a lot of people. And I remember she called my grandmother and said, Mom, I quit my job and I'm starting a business. And my grandmother said, she called everybody. She called Aunt Iola, Aunt Teen, everybody, Uncle AJ, Aunt Flo, everybody came. And she said, pray for my daughter because I think she lost her mind. She quit her good paying job to start a business, and I don't even know what it is. She said it's something called Just Me Personnel Services. And it was the last time that they were all here in July of 1983, 5th, 6th, 7th, or 8th, somewhere in that area. Because my grandmother would be diagnosed with cancer a little while after that. But I remember we had a prayer circle in 18 in that little den, that little step down den in there, right next to the carport. And there was a prayer circle. And we prayed and prayed for strength, prayed for success, prayed that my mother might come back to her senses, maybe. But I say all that to say this is that 41 years later, those prayers, my grandmother's prayers were answered by virtue of family. And none of that would be possible without this. None of it. And I'm thankful. I'm honored. And without Route 66, without the Choctaw Freedmen, without any of that, there will be none of us. And I'm thankful. And 41 years later, here we are. And thank you, Doris. All right, I'm done.
Hello, everybody. Wow, this is something. And just help me get myself together because this is overwhelming in a way. My name is Wanda Jackson Warren. I was born in 1948 in Eastport, Oklahoma. Some people don't know where Eastport is, but it's the very southeastern part of Oklahoma, right across from Arkansas. And if you know where Tom, Oklahoma is, we could probably, there was a trail. If you went on the road, it took you a long time, but you could cut across. My cousin, Doris Ann and Angela are here. But like I said, I was born in Eastport, Oklahoma. I currently reside in Portland, Oregon. We relocated there in 1955, but I've been married 56 years, 3 children, 4 grandchildren, retired after 37 years with Union Pacific Railroad. My grandmother was Rosa Liggins Smith, Choctaw Freedmen number 2868, born in 1897, Choctaw Nation, Indian Territory. My mother, Willie B. Smith, was born in America, Oklahoma in 1926. My father, James Jackson, was born in 1918 in Ashdown, Arkansas. Thank you, Cousin Doris. Some have said it, but this is just amazing that we can gather here during Native American Heritage Month to be able to share some Choctaw Freedmen history. Special thanks to Cousin Doris and everybody that is here. And she's already given thanks to the Historical Society, but it's wonderful and all the sponsors to be able to allow us to come. Well, I just want to say that our roots go back to Hannibal Butler and his daughter, Elizabeth. It was one of his daughters. They were owned by Choctaw Chief Peter Pitchlin. Elizabeth married Webster Cole. They both, Dawes numbers 694 and 693 in Choctaw Nation, Indian Territory. And Ozella married Joe Boligans, born in 1875. They had 6 children: Rosa, Ned, Lizetta, Elalina, Elizabeth, we call her Aunt Bess, Aunt Bessie, and Lanera. She's not on this, she's not on the picture of them right here. I think she had passed away. Ozella also had a son, Lemon Cole, prior to her marriage to Joe Liggins. The lives and legacies of our grandparents continue to guide us and represent a history of courage and strength. I want to especially honor these women and the mothers and grandmothers like them. I call them the hidden figures of our heritage. Our men were on the front line, but these women were behind the lines. These grandmothers taught us pride, respect, compassion in an overwhelming obstacles that we would have to face. After the Civil War, we all know blacks and freedmen faced terror from groups like the Ku Klux Klan that has been talked about. Their night rides, cross burnings, and lynchings aimed to strip us of our newly won rights. But these women, they prepared us for a world where survival often required silence, but vigilance. They passed down what we call the talk that the Black American parents still have with their children, especially their sons, about the dangers that they'll face due to racism, especially while traveling and are being stopped by law enforcement. And like my sisters in law enforcement, my brother, my husband, but we still have that talk with our sons and our daughters when they're going somewhere. These women helped to raise a generation who not only survived, but they thrived. And their descendants continue to contribute to their communities and this country. I'm going to take you back, but then I'll bring you back. Today, we'd like to share some brief glimpses of the lives of several Liggins Cole's Choctaw Freedmen descendants and how our travels on the roads and highways of Oklahoma and beyond not only impacted their lives, but the lives of others as well. I'm going to talk about my Uncle Tom Smith. I really love him and adore him. He was born in 1917 in Tom, Oklahoma. His mother was Rosa Liggins Smith, grandmother Ozella Cole Liggins. After their father abandoned them at the age of 13, he dropped out of school to take care of the family. Opportunity. Uncle Tom, instead of making $7.50 a week picking cotton, which was the average wage for a man, he was able to make $15 to $20 a week working at the sawmills. They were popping up all over Oklahoma. He traveled on dirt roads and gravel roads to towns like Wright City and Broken Bow, where he worked for Butts Sawmill and Dirk Brothers Choctaw Lumber Company. The timber that was processed went to build homes and also helped to build infrastructure, which was important in Oklahoma at that time. After serving in the World War II in the Army, 1943 to 45, Tom relocated to Kansas City with his family. With the skills that he acquired, he was able to get jobs in construction, and he built bridges, helped to build bridges and buildings, some which still stand in that area. But during the summers, family was so important, and his mother was so important that lived in Idabel. He would get the family together, and they will come back to check on Grandma Rosie and us, that we were still here at that time. They would travel at night. They took enough food and water. The pound cake, we know, and the chicken somebody talked about, that was a staple when we traveled a long way. They avoided certain towns, and they prayed for a safe place to get gas. When their car pulled up on that gravel road in front of our house in Eastport, we ran out and we celebrated after we heard the words, "Praise the Lord." We didn't have any trouble. You see, the cost of travel was more than miles. It was a measure of courage and faith for black families. They didn't have a green book, but we had the good book. And it was the Lord that took us sometimes between point to point. And then another man, this experience has been so good. Another man that I just adore, I call and talk to him maybe an hour and a half a week now, is cousin Charles Burris, who lives in Idabel area. And his sister and niece are here today. But he was born July 21st, 1947. His mother was Odessa Hunter, grandmother. This strength of character of a man who was being demeaned but chose to protect his family. So this experience left a lasting impact on my brother, Harry Jackson, instilling in him both a fierce loyalty to family, he'll fight you over us now, and a desire to protect others from injustice. Harry, we were in Portland, after 1955, but he joined the Air Force. He was a state patrolman and retired as a Portland Police Lieutenant with a total of 34 years. He was named Officer of the Year. There's a plaza named after him in honor of his cleaning up a boulevard that was plagued with crime. And later, he was selected to film the first 12 episodes of the TV show Cops. His drive to serve the public and make his community safer was shaped by that moment on that dark road going over to Tom, where he witnessed my father's silent sacrifice. So his career was defined by his commitment to justice and compassion. So these roads changed our lives for good. Have you ever heard what the enemy meant for good, that the Lord turned it around? Yeah. The enemy went for bad, the Lord turned it around for good. So although the journey of Liggins Cole's Choctaw Freedmen and descendants was challenging many times, our travels on the roads and the highways and the byways of Oklahoma and beyond included times of joy and hope, okay? They not only allowed us to prosper, but to give back to our communities and this country. But most important, traveling helped us to stay connected with family. I have learned so many of you, my cousins and aunties, and Aunt Ernestine, she's really a cousin, but I love her because she introduced us to our heritage. And then our cousin Doris, and the ones of you that are continuing to hold that dear. Thank you again to the organizers. And sometimes we think unexpected alliances with some of these folks down here that made this possible, to share a bit of our history, our experiences, and to celebrate the incredible legacy of the Choctaw Freedmen family. Thank you.
Okay, I'm back again. All right. Now we're going to talk about the Coleman side of our family. Looking into the Coleman side of our family, I discovered my great-great-grandmother, Delia Coleman Burris, was a midwife in Tom, Oklahoma, Chili Flat community. That's right, in southeast Oklahoma. And she delivered over 100 babies. How did I find that? I found it in a newspaper article. You can see it on the banner number 2. Delia at 109, world moves very fast. It's documented. It took me many, many years to find that article, but I found it. Delia's parents was Avery and John Coleman. Avery Coleman was also a midwife, as shown in many of our documents, which were from the Dawes Commission from 1968 to from 1878, from 1868 through 1878. The U.S. Freedmen Bureau records as well. Avery was born in 1841, and her husband, John Coleman, was born in 1822, as shown on those official records in Lowndes, Mississippi. Additionally, supporting documents were connected them to the Choctaw Indian tribes was the Dawes interview files on the Choctaw Freedmen census cards, as listed on wills and probate records of John Pitchlin, wife Sophia Pitchlin, and their son, Chief Peter P. Pitchlin of the Choctaw Nation, as the owner of Avery and John Coleman, and of course, Ruth Ann Cole Burris, which we'll talk about. They all lived, and before they traveled on the Trail of Tears to Oklahoma, they all lived in Lowndes, Mississippi. Avery and John went on and they had 8 children, 6 girls and 2 boys. 4 of Avery's daughters, Hattie, Nancy, Betsy, and Delia, who's on the banner in the back, and the Coleman family married 4 of the Burris brothers, Dave Jr., Jerry, Morgan, and John, who were from Ruth Ann Cole Burris's and John Burris's side of the family. This is where my great-grandfathers, dad and mother, John Burris and Delia Coleman Burris, came in. It is well noted that my Choctaw Freedmen ancestors who were living among the tribe were owned by Chief Peter P. Pitchlin's mother, Sophia Pitchlin, who knew English, but she refused to speak it. So it was pretty obvious that our enslaved ancestors, Avery and John Coleman and Ruth Ann Cole Burris, who worked and lived among Sophia and her family, had to be able to speak it, understand, and know the Choctaw language. Growing up on the east side of Oklahoma, I recall my mother, Isla Burris, picking green poke salad and peppermint plant that grew wild in our backyard. She stewed the green poke salad plant and added it as a side dish on our plate, along with frying up some hot water cornbread. Oh, she used to use mint tea leaves, and she added to the pitcher of iced tea. In medicine for us, she would sometimes make us a hot cup of cow chip tea, for those of you who know what cow chip is. Yes, I had to hold my nose when I would take it. Cow chip tea. Okay, this is my brother James here. He can attest to it. As a 10 and 11-year-old child in 1966, I remember my mother, Isla Burris, taking my brothers, sisters, and I to see my great-grandma Delia's Coleman's house. Upon arriving, I still have a detailed account of this trip as if it was yesterday. Upon entering Delia's house, there was only one light bulb in the whole house, hanging from the wiring which hung down from the ceiling in the living room. Creeping slowly through great-grandma Delia Coleman's house, there were kerosene lamps placed in every room, followed by a black ironwood stove in the kitchen which my mother cooked on while we were there. My brothers and my sister and I, we would go outside to play. You remember? Yes, snakes there too. There was an outhouse. For those of you who don't know what an outhouse is, it's an outside toilet. And it was in the backyard, and we would have to dodge the chickens to get to the outhouse. As a 10, 11-year-old child back then, I was old enough to realize that my great-grandma Delia Coleman Burris was old and she was sickly and frail, but little did I know that would be my last visit with her. By great-grandma Delia's bedside, she had only a few months remaining before she could play. You remember? Yes, snakes there too. There was an outhouse. For those of you who don't know what an outhouse is, it's an outside toilet. And it was in the backyard, and we would have to dodge the chickens to get to the outhouse. As a 10, 11-year-old child back then, I was old enough to realize that my great-grandma Delia Coleman Burris was old and she was sickly and frail, but little did I know that would be my last visit with her. By great-grandma Delia's bedside, she had only a few months remaining before she passed away. Some of you are probably wondering, why is this important? Well, as a 10 and 11-year-old child back then, we should never discount what a young child experiences. However, I knew very little about the dynamics and the importance of family history and genealogy as I do today. However, after growing up and raising a family myself, in addition to learning more about Black history, taking on the signals during conversations from the ranks of our elderly relatives who are now in their 80s and 90s, they are now sitting in the seat to remind us about our history and our heritage during family reunions, holiday gatherings, and weddings and funerals, through personal accounts and narrative stories they tell. Stories which are still repeated over and over by family relatives and others who know great-grandma Delia Coleman Burris and other Choctaw Freedmen ancestors who would remind us. They are essential in helping reinforce the truth about the Coleman Burris family history, in addition to keeping me to remain on a trajectory to help identify and validate other undiscovered and unknown narrative stories and documented accounts which are still buried and have been for decades. However, I've been fortunate enough to uncover other information that had not been discovered by utilizing digitalized records from software on the Oklahoma Historical Center, the Oklahoma History Center, and visiting other and local historical archive sites, in addition to using commercial sources such as Ancestry.com, FamilySearch.com, etc. So I've come to this conclusion over my 30 years of research. One must keep in mind the accuracy of records. Yes, they can contain errors, misspellings of surnames and first name, ages, and their person's race and ethnic origin, since the people who often record the records during that era in time had their own biases. Some of them were unable to correctly spell the person's names during their interviews. This is human, and we must see this every day in our interactions as people we come in contact with when we're doing business. However, we have somewhat of an advantage in the technology world we live in today because we have spell check on our iPhones and computers. So I guess that's why the elderly of our ancestors who lived many decades and centuries ago realized that they were living in an era of post-Reconstruction where their children and people grew up not being able to read and write and go beyond the 6th grade in school. Our ancestors' direct experiences and intuition, I believe, have shown them, while they were dealing with their land records, bank records, and even money they owed on their accounts at the feed store, were important official records and how they may sometimes not reflect the truth. So for them, I believe capturing the truth began with writing things down in their Bible, such as recording the births and deaths of their family, in addition to giving oral accounts and making sure their narrative stories and experiences are passed on from generation to generation, believing and ensuring them that this is another opportunity to put things in place which will help secure in making our history to be never lost. As I close out my presentation today, I would like to end by showing you a video. This particular video was taken today, on this very day, November the 15th, 2 years ago, with Cousin Clara Sue. Go ahead. With that in mind, now we're going to start our interview with Cousin Clara Sue. Cousin, will you tell us your full name?
My name is Clara Sue Johnson.
Great. What was your name before you married?
Clara Sue Burris.
Do you mind giving me your age and date of birth?
Oh, January 24, 1930.
Okay. Where were you born?
Thomas, Oklahoma.
Who are your parents?
Luella Weaver and Duke Burris.
Where were they born?
Luella was born in Arkansas. Duke Burris was born in Oklahoma.
Good. Now, tell me a little bit about where you grew up, Cousin Clara. So you can look into this.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, just tell us about where you grew up.
Well, as a child,
We can look into it.
as a child, I grew up around Chili Flat, a little town called Chili Flat, and there was a little creek there. We had to walk across the bridge to get to school on school days. So I stayed with that school until I was in the 3rd grade. Then they had a change from 4th to 6th. And that was out in a farther out in the country. I don't remember the name of that little school, but it was a nice little school. We had a different teacher. And I learned so much during those 3 years that I was in that school. Came to find out I was graduating at the 7th grade. It shocked me because I didn't know if you could graduate that soon. And the teacher said, you got so much information, we don't need to take you any farther. So we're going to get you ready for a job.
Okay.
And so I was assisting the school teacher with her work with the kids for 3 years. That was a joy for me. I had the people thinking I was a teacher.
Tell me about other children that you played with.
Well, I had two Choctaw girls. One of them was named Annie B. and Laura, and they taught me how to speak their language. And I was a joyful person when I knew how to speak a different language.
And what was that language you learned,
And
cousin?
it was Choctaw Indian language. Choctaw Pika, Hikamasara Nakafia, and Kasaruta. And just so many things. She would ask me questions, and I'd say, you repeat it, and I'll repeat after you. So I have never forgot those words. I fool my church folks sometimes when I say something to them. They say, what did you say? I said, oh, I forgot. I was talking another language. I said, how many language do you know? I said, just 2. Well, all that you say, it sounds like 3 or 4 languages. But it was only Choctaw Indian. And I enjoyed it, and still do today.
Cousin Clara Sue, were there very many other Choctaw Freedmen or people in our family that were around who could also
Yes.
speak it and understand what was being stated?
Yes, there were. There was a whole group of them. We had the whole neighborhood could speak it, where we live. Whole neighborhood could speak that language.
Could speak Choctaw?
Could speak Choctaw.
Before I begin this video, I want to give you a little context and background about Cousin Clara Sue. She was just 2 days shy of her 93rd birthday before this, after this video was taken. So I just want to first honor her. We have a memoriam table over there in which we were going to be handing out souvenir bags for everyone at the conclusion of our program today. But I just want to say, for those of you who doubt and have questions about the Choctaw Freedmen and African Americans who were a part of the Native American tribes, listen to your ancestors, listen to your elderly. Today we go back and we're using information and we're capturing it through technology, which is our cell phones and cameras and iPads. But a lot of the information that I received have come through personal letters that were written, from stories and accounts that were told, that I was able to reach out to family members during the pandemic when we had time to talk and to ask questions about other relatives. And this is how I located Cousin Clara Sue during this particular time, during the pandemic, when we would host our family Zoom calls. And it was noted that she could speak Choctaw language. And I also found another family member of ours who's in Tom today who still speaks Choctaw as well. He's up in age as well. So with that in mind, I'm going to say I want to thank each and every one of you all for coming out today. I want to thank our sponsors, American Express, the Road Trip, Route 66 Ahead Partnership, who partnered with us, OHS Historical Society, and of course, our board members at Choctaw Freedmen Citizenship Footprints organization. With that in mind, I'm going to turn it back over to our MC.
Before we move into this next section, I would like to remind everyone that there is a lot of food left if you would like any snacks. As the program is coming to a close, I would like everyone to welcome Ms. Sadie Herrera, Oklahoma Historical Society Multicultural Officer. She will be providing some closing remarks.
Thank you, Miss Amelia. I am proud to get to know you better. As she said, my name is Heidi Herrera. I am the Multicultural Officer for the Oklahoma Historical Society. One of my main objectives is to develop programs and highlight the contributions of the historically underrepresented communities. And it is my pleasure to learn more about the Choctaw Freedmen. And I've heard all about the fusion of roots and identity. It is important to know where we came from. And I am glad to welcome those of you who came back home. It is important to know where we're from. And Oklahoma is home to the Choctaw Freedmen. And it is important to know that some of the descriptions that have been mentioned here, all the way from Boise City to Miami, Altus to Idabel, Marietta to Blackwell. I heard people saying there are some spiritual songs that are native of the Choctaw. There are some resilient entrepreneurs, interpreters, health providers, artists, vigilants, advocates, educators, all of them with serving hearts. That's what we need to know about this community. It's all of those contributions that have been done over the years, and this is the time where we have gathered to talk about it and to reflect on those who have done the work. And the work is not done, it continues, and I am glad to have been chosen to collaborate with Ms. Doris Burrs Williamson. She has done a tremendous job. She helped me understand the importance of this group, and in our website, whenever you go back and visit okhistory.org, you can find a section where it says Black history is Oklahoma history, but also Freedmen history, it's Oklahoma history. The research done by the Choctaw Freedmen Citizens Footprints, it's alive. And now we get to unveil the names of those people who were the background, the roots of this community, and it's not going anywhere, it's just growing. And I am glad, and it's my honor to get to meet you all, and thank you for taking the time to be here and take pictures at the end and celebrate who we are as a community. And so it is my pleasure to welcome you and to let you know that you're part of this history and that everything that we're doing here is to celebrate the people of Oklahoma. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Herrera. Now I'd like to call our last two speakers. First, we will have thank yous from Doris Burris Williamson, followed by the closing prayer by Wanda Warren.
Thank you again. First of all, I want to call up our wonderful speakers and come up, and I'd like to extend a little brief, short gift token to all of our speakers. Brenda Droke, would you come up? With our official plaque from the Choctaw Freedmen, Wanda Warren, Michael Victor. Okay, Brenda. Would you hand it? Yes, would you hand it over, please?
If the person being recognized.
Yeah, would you come on over there?
Sure.
thank you again. That's going to conclude our project and program, and I'm going to let, oh, that's the end, so we're going to have ending prayer. So would we get Wanda Warren, would you come up and do our closing prayer for us, please?
Father God, all I can say is thank you. Thank you for this historical, amazing event. Thank you for orchestrating it. Thank you for everyone who's had a part of this wonderful time that we have got to go back to our roots and honor our descendants. Father, we thank you for our family and what you've done and how you're continuing to use them and extend the legacy that was started by our ancestors. Father, we thank you for all that has been accomplished here today. We give you glory and we give you honor. So we thank you and we pray, Lord, that you would just continue to bless us, Lord. We thank you that history and truth can be the same. It is the same. And so we thank you for being a part of that today. We love you and we give you all the glory for everything that has been accomplished. Amen and amen.